Hello and welcome. My name is Cassie and I am so excited to welcome all of you friends and fellow artists to my nature-based art and mindfulness meditation tutorials. These videos are made in connection with my fundraiser for the Walk to End Alzheimer's this year. So I will put my link to my walk page in the description below this video if you're interested in learning more or supporting me in that way. I would so appreciate it. Otherwise, these videos are meant to be a resource for anyone who's looking to incorporate more self-care into their lives, anyone who's looking for a new way to relax or to tap into nature as a source of peace and calm. Today we are going to reflect on our connection to creation in the larger sense, and we are going to use the meditative art process of creating what's called a wish stick. Now, a mentor of mine named Elizabeth Hyatt once said, "To be well is to live in deepening connection to creation, a connection which we find by developing relations with plants, animals, soil, stars, and with our own art making as well. We are inherently connected to each other and to the earth and to all of creation. And we are most healthy when we nurture those relationships. So today's intention is to do just that. I invite you to reflect on your connection to the rest of creation as we complete our art project today. I'd like to introduce an enjoyable meditative art process. It is one of my absolute favorite ways to repurpose natural items like sticks and feathers, as well as use up scraps of art materials that I may have, like string, paper, fabric, buttons, and beads. It can be used as a tool again and again to help reorient someone to a goal, an intention, or an affirmation for yourself. So without further ado, I will introduce our project, which is the wish stick. So in order to create this, you'll see I have a link down in the description to two different lists of materials. The first is an essential list. That's what we will definitely be needing to create our wish stick. And the other is an optional list. So that could include any other items or little bits and pieces that you want to incorporate that I might not have on hand, or anything extra that you'd like to add. So our essential list includes a stick, a scrap of paper. I like the torn edges, so mine's a little rough looking, as well as pen, pencil, marker, some kind of writing utensil. You'll want some string, yarn, or ribbon to wrap around your stick. So I have a couple different options here, a couple different shapes and sizes. Also, you'll need scissors and glue. I'm using tacky glue. For optional items, any beads. I have 2 black beads. I have some broken jewelry that I'm going to be using. Buttons are great. I have a goose feather that I found at the park that I'll be using. Sequins or glitter. Collage materials are awesome as well. I have this little butterfly that I will be incorporating on my wish stick. So any kind of collage materials that you want to include. If you are collaging things, a great product to use is Podge. This is an adhesive, but you can also put it over the top for a clear coat that kind of keeps everything from peeling off. And if you're using Podge, I would recommend a little brush to put it on, as well as paint materials, and anything else that you would like to add to your wish stick is fine. That's what I will be working with today. So our first step is to use our little scrap of paper and our writing utensils to choose our wish. Now, When you're doing this project in the broader sense, you could be thinking of a goal for yourself, an intention for yourself, maybe an affirmation, something that you would like to keep in mind and remember every time that you see your stick. And that's what you would write down. But for our purposes today, I am going to show you a couple different quotes and single word choices that would be great for this project and for our intention of understanding ourselves in connection to creation. So the phrase that I chose is nature nurtures. So I'm going to write that on my little scrap of paper here. I like that phrase because I think it's a great reminder when life gets stressful. It's a good idea to get out into nature, and that always makes me feel a little bit more centered and at peace and calm. So I used my pen to write that down on my scrap of paper. I'm also going to use my highlighter to go over it. Just add a little bit to my phrase. And as I do this, I will put up images of those other quotes and words that I mentioned earlier. So if any of those resonate with you, I encourage you to pause the video and to copy that onto your piece of paper. So here's my little scrap. It says nature nurtures. Our next step is to glue your paper onto the stick. So you have some choices here. You can either, depending on the size and shape of your stick, you can either wrap it around and glue it on this way, or since I want mine to be visible in a focal point, I'm going to glue it on this way so it can be seen in red. That's another choice that you're going to have to make with the wish stick. It's up to you if you ultimately want your wish to be visible or not in the finished product. So if you don't plan on having it visible, typically we wrap either the string or the ribbon, whatever you have, around and over top of your wish, so you know it's there but nobody else does. Or you could do it the way that I'm going to do mine, and you can leave it visible, so you'll stop wrapping so that you are able to still read your wish. And then you'll just glue that piece of paper onto the stick. So I'm using my tacky glue. I'm picking a spot on my stick, and I'm just going to hold that down and glue it on. Nature nurtures. Okay, so I invite you to glue down your wish onto your stick anywhere that you feel is the best place for it and in whatever orientation you'd like it to be. So go ahead and make those choices and glue that puppy down. All right, now our next step is to choose the yarn or string or ribbon that you'd like to start with. And we are going to tie one end to the stick. I think I'm going to start with this natural looking hemp. And I'm going to begin right at this note where I put down my intention. Now I'm not going to cover the whole thing, but I do want to overlap it a little bit to give it a little bit of support from that string as the glue dries. So we'll just tie it on. And as we wrap the string around the stick, it's important that we go slowly and we really start to think about our intention Remember, it is a meditative process that we are working on today. So we are not going to rush through any part of making this stick. So I put a little dab of glue underneath the knot that I created on my string, and that's just going to help to secure it so it doesn't slip or untie itself. And as you can see, I'm just going to start wrapping the string around my stick. Kind of covering that extra end that I had from where I tied the knot. I'm just working outwards. Now you can have the wrap as tight or as loose as you'd like around your stick. It's kind of up to you how you want it to look. And if you want to include anything else later down the road, you're going to want to leave a little space for that as well. So we're just wrapping slowly. And these are the repetitive movements that are really going to help us to connect. Alright, so I've reached the end of this little scrap of string, so I'm going to glue that end down. Kind of up to you as far as you would like to take it. If you want to work all the way to the end of your stick, you can. If you want to do sections, you can. Since I have a few different colors and sizes of string to work with, I think I'm just going to do smaller bursts on mine, but it's totally up to you how you want to go about wrapping your stick. So we'll spend some time here. I think the process of wrapping the yarn or the string around a stick is a great metaphor for what we're focusing on today, which is connection. It's almost as if we are binding ourselves to this piece of nature that we have. I think the stick represents nature itself. And by wrapping this string around it and kind of adorning it with all of our hard work and our intentions, we are interacting with nature in a different way. We are choosing to bring ourselves into communion with this little piece of nature. We've invited it into our homes, so to speak, as we are invited into nature. It's kind of interesting how those ideas come together as we're creating our art piece. I think a lot of times in our modern world, we really get caught up in, what we're doing day to day. We don't always leave time for just the slowness and the stillness that nature has to offer. So this project is a good way to reconnect to that part of our lives. Okay, so I'm going to glue this end down. Hopefully you are right along with me, wrapping your stick, making choices. Like mine had this little branch part that got broken off, and I chose to kind of go onto both sides of it, wrapping on either side. I think I'm going to include some of this bigger hemp. Maybe I'll just tie it. So again, these choices, you just make it up as you go along. There's really no right or wrong way to do this. And I encourage you to make the choices throughout this process that you feel are right for you in this particular piece. No one can make that decision for you. It's kind of a personal journey that we're all on, albeit side by side. There. So continue adding any of the yarn or string that you have in any way that feels good to you and your project. I think I'm going to hang mine when I'm all finished with it, so that's kind of the driving force behind the orientation and some of my choices here. My computer's asleep. Here we are. So I have this going on. So I think I'm going to add next my beads and the jewelry and the feather. So if you have a feather and you want it to hang below your stick, mine is going to be kind of oriented this way, and then I'm going to have my feather kind of hanging down here. You can see. So a good way to do that is to choose, I think I'm going to use the black string. Choose how long you'd like that hanging piece to be, and then give it just a little bit extra because you're going to want to tie it and wrap it around the feather a bit. So I have a pretty decently long piece of string here, and I think I'm going to start by tying it around my feather. So you'll want to find the middle of your string, hold both of the ends. So there's my middle. I'm just going to do one regular knot, and then I'm going to glue it and wrap it so that the feather stays secure and it doesn't slide out. So there I have my knot around the feather. I'm just going to put a little dot of glue. I'm going to bring that up the end of the feather a little bit and just wrap my string maybe we'll do another knot at the top just to really secure that in there. So I'll secure that knot at the top with another dot of glue. If you're working with beads, you could always put beads on the end of that feather as well. I only have two little beads here, so I think I'm just going to use those down the line a little bit here. Now let's see if this fits. I think this might even be too thick of, yep, There's some string to work with in there. So you'll find that out as well. Some of your scraps might just not be compatible with some of the other materials that you brought. And that's okay, because I think my orange string is going to work just fine for that. Okay, so I have my feather, and I'm going to attach it now to the stick. So I'm just going to pick a spot along where I've been wrapping. So here. And I'm going to tie it. Tie it, wrap it, and tie it some more. So you can do this with beads or buttons. And it's always fun to just experiment with how it's displayed. So I kind of want that to go behind. There. So I'm just going to wrap the rest of this string. Keep working my way down the stick. And I'm going to glue that there. If you don't like gluey fingers, you might want to have a paper towel or something on hand. I don't really mind, but I know the texture does bother some people, so by all means, you can always pause the video at any time and stop to clean up or to rearrange whatever you need to in order to make this process enjoyable. It's supposed to be a relaxing, enjoyable thing. So I'm going to pull this tighter so that it's even on both sides. Where my feather is hanging. There. I think it is so enjoyable to work with these natural materials. It's one of my favorite ways to connect with nature while making art, is to kind of go out and collect these little items. Like I said, I got the stick and the feather from a local park. So that was a lot of fun. I got to go to the park with my daughter and kind of hunt around for some of these things. Depending on where you live, you might have materials just available in your yard. So it's a great way you can kind of get out and enjoy nature a little bit while you're out searching for some of these things. Okay, so as you can see, I've got my little feather now secured to my wish stick. It's kind of hanging, and now I'm going to test out this. I have this orange macrame thread that I'm going to use, I think, for the beads and for this jewelry, because the opening is very small. I think it'll work if I use a little glue on there, on the ends. People who sew know the struggle of trying to thread the needle, and the little pieces of thread go every which way. Kind of what is happening here with this. There we go. Alright, so I got my piece of jewelry on here. I think what I want to do is have this up higher. than the feather. Okay. So sometimes it's just experimentation, trying things out, and when they don't work out, you go a different direction, and then at the end you see that it all came together how it should. Kind of the process, a lot of times. So I think I'll cut my string about here. This used to be an earring, but the clasp broke, so I decided I was going to hold on to it for some unknown purpose at the time. And it turned out that this is what it was meant for. So I'm going to tie a little knot here above my earring, what was once an earring and is now just a pretty gold adornment. I'll tie a knot on both sides for the beads. I'm going to put the beads on here. Now, a lot of what I'm using here, as I mentioned, the string that I'm using is hemp. The beads that I'm using are actually made out of lava. They were from a bracelet that I broke and just held on to for many moons. So a lot of those materials are also, natural materials from the earth. So it kind of all fits together. But really it depends on what you have on hand, the aesthetic of it, and what you like as far as how you position it and arrange it. There's a lot of personal choice here. But as we're creating, you can see that we're interacting with these pieces of nature that are from, different parts of the world. They serve different purposes. Some are old and some are new. Look, I'm sure this feather that I got is from like a young little goose. Alright, so I got the beads on here. I'm tying a knot on either side so they're not slipping and sliding around on the string. And I'm just going to tie this on. We're about in the home stretch here. So depending on your process, this process is a bit different for everybody depending on the materials that you chose and the approach that you want to go with it. So if you need more time, I encourage you to spend as much time as you like on this project, of course. But as for me in our example here, we are almost through. So another way to think about our relationship with nature is through food. We're going to spend some time on that a little bit more in depth in another video that I have in my head at this point. But that's an important way that we interact with nature, Nature provides sustenance for us. It provides us shelter. It gives us what we need. All of the conditions that we have in order to live our lives are met by nature. The sun is not too hot. The earth is not too frigid to produce plant and animal life for us to consume for our food. It's really kind of interesting when you take time to think about it. Alright, so as you can see, I've added my little jewelry embellishments there, and the last touch that I'm going to add is my butterfly. I'm going to add my butterfly probably right around in there. Butterfly is such a beautiful symbol of new life, renewal, new beginnings, resiliency. I mean, in order to become a butterfly, they have to completely dissolve their little caterpillar bodies in the cocoon. Isn't that awesome? And then they emerge as this new creature. So as you can see, I'm using the Mod Podge. I'm just brushing it on where I want my butterfly. I'll stick the butterfly down, and then I do a little bit more Mod Podge brushed over the top. And it dries totally clear, so you won't see, it looks a little milky when you first lay it down, but it dries totally clear. And it protects that collage from coming apart, popping off. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of Mod Podge just around the edges of my paper here to hold it down really well to the stick, since that surface is very uneven and rough. The bark on my stick is pretty weathered and rough. So I'll add my Mod Podge. So as you can see, it kind of looks pretty gluey, but when it dries, it will be totally clear, and I will include a picture of the finished product when I post the video. So that is pretty much it for the wish stick. You just keep working until you have all of the elements added that you'd like to include on there, and keep focusing on that intention, which is that we are not isolated creatures. We are a part of nature. Nature is a part of us. We influence each other. And we are healthy when we are in communion. So I want to thank you all so much for joining me today and sharing this art experience. I hope it leaves you with a sense of peace and well-being that nature and art have to offer. Keep an eye out for my next art tutorials, and until next time, take care. Thank you.